The air shimmered, distorting the horizon into a rippling mirage. One minute we were sunburnt and tipsy on the Lido deck, the next, a heavy silence had settled, punctuated only by the unsettling whine of the previously jovial ship engines. My stomach churned, not just from the sudden change in course, but from the unsettling chill that now clung to the humid air. "Where the hell are we going?" muttered Sarah, squinting at the distorted ocean. "The captain said there was a storm, but this is..." She trailed off, her voice catching on a gasp. On the polished deck, just outside a locked cabin, lay a single, crimson footprint. Not a vacationer's beach souvenir, but a large, misshapen print, like something heavy and clawed had left its mark. Panic, cold and sharp, pricked at my skin. "Maybe it's a prank," offered Ben, his voice strained. We all knew it wasn't. This wasn't a frat prank gone wrong. This was something else. Driven by a morbid curiosity, we clustered around the locked door. Its usually cheerful mermaid decal mocked us with its misplaced cheer. Through the porthole, we glimpsed a scene that froze the blood in my veins. The cabin, usually cluttered with tacky souvenirs and damp towels, was eerily sterile. A single operating table dominated the space, and on it lay a figure, impossibly still. From the glimpses I could steal, their skin was stretched taut, pale and marked with strange, bioluminescent symbols. It wasn't torture, it was something more methodical, like vivisection on a grand scale. Suddenly, a guttural growl echoed through the metal walls of the ship. It wasn't a human sound. It was something raw, primal, and laced with an unsettling intelligence. We scrambled back, hearts pounding like frantic drums. "We need to get the hell out of here," screamed Sarah, her voice close to hysteria. But the door wouldn't budge. No frantic pounding, no desperate pleas could coax it open. Panic turned to cold terror when the lights flickered and died. In the suffocating darkness, the air crackled with a low hum, punctuated by occasional sparks. The ship shuddered, a monstrous groan ripping through its length. Then, a faint, rhythmic tapping started from within the walls, growing steadily louder. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, a chilling symphony of metallic claws scraping against metal. We huddled together, fear of physical presence that choked the air from our lungs. The tapping stopped abruptly, replaced by a sickening scrape. Metal tore, yielding with a shriek. A cold, blue light flooded the corridor, revealing a figure unlike anything I'd ever imagined. Tall, skeletal, and vaguely insectoid, it moved with unnatural grace. Its eyes, pools of cold blue light, scanned the room, locking onto us. Despite its monstrous appearance, there was a chilling sense of purpose to its movements, not mindless rage. It wasn't a mindless slasher, it was a surgeon. A cold dread washed over me. We weren't just prey, we were subjects for some horrific, alien experiment. This wasn't a thrill ride. It was the Bermuda Triangle, and it held a far more terrifying secret than anyone dared to imagine. The alien surgeon lunged. Not with the ferocity of a beast, but with the focused precision of a scalpel. Ben, closest to the breach, was the first to go. His scream, mercifully cut short, echoed eerily in the metallic confines. Sarah and I scrambled back, my mind a whirlwind of terror. We were cornered rats, facing a predator unlike any in our nightmares. The blue light intensified, revealing more figures emerging from the ripped metal. Their forms blurring between skeletal and mechanical. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, throwing us off balance. The blue light flickered and died, plunging us back into darkness. Was it a malfunction? A desperate maneuver by the crew? We didn't have time to contemplate. A guttural shriek sliced through the air, followed by the metallic clang of something heavy hitting the floor. In the inky blackness, Sarah grabbed my arm, her frantic whisper tickling my ear. "The water tank. We need to get to the water tank," I didn't question her. We stumbled towards the emergency exit sign, its faint glow the only beacon in the suffocating darkness. Panic propelled us forward as we slammed into bulkheads, tripped over debris, and fought against the ever-present nausea. Just as my lungs were about to burst, we stumbled into the emergency water tank room. The metallic door clanged shut behind us, a sliver of hope flickering within. Sarah scrambled to secure the heavy bolts, her hands shaking. "They can't get through this, right?" My voice sounded ragged, barely a whisper. "Not easily," Sarah panted. But for how long? The question hung heavy in the air, punctuated by the unsettling symphony of scraping and metallic shrieks echoing from the corridor. We huddled on the cold floor, the silence within the tank amplifying the sounds of terror outside. Then, a change. The scraping grew frantic, desperate. The shrieks became a cacophony of frustration. It felt like hours, though it was probably just minutes, before the sounds finally subsided. A heavy silence descended, broken only by our ragged breaths. We clung to each other, fear clinging to us like a second skin. "Do you think?" Sarah started, her voice barely audible. "They're gone." I finished, my own voice a croak. We waited, listening to the unnerving silence that seemed to press in on us from all sides. Finally, a faint glimmer of light flickered under the bolted door. With trembling hands, Sarah unbolted the door, each metallic clank resonating like a death knell. We peeked out, fear turning to a cold dread. The corridor was empty, bathed in an eerie green glow emanating from the ripped wall. But it wasn't just the emptiness that sent chills down my spine. The metallic tang in the air, the absence of bodies, it spoke of an escape, a retreat. We weren't done yet. The Bermuda Triangle held a horrifying secret, and it wasn't finished with us. We stumbled back onto the deck, the once familiar surroundings and now a tableau of horror. Empty cabins, bloodstains, a chilling silence that felt more ominous than screams. We were the only survivors, left with the knowledge that the Bermuda Triangle held something far more terrifying than storms and rogue waves. The question hung heavy in the stagnant air. Were we the lucky ones? Or were we simply the ones left to spread the word, to warn others of the horrors that lurked in the heart of the sea? The alien surgeons weren't gone, just regrouping. The metallic tang in the air wasn't just blood, it was a sickly sweet, ozone-laced odor that burned our throats with every inhale. Through the gaping hole in the hull, we could see a horrifying spectacle. The alien ship, a monstrous centipede-like thing, pulsated with an unnatural bioluminescence. Its segmented hull latched onto the cruise ship like a parasite feasting on its prey. Our brief respite was shattered by a sound that defied description, a wet, guttural ripping noise. We turned back to the hallway, our hearts turning to lead in our chests. A grotesque parody of a human lay sprawled on the deck, its chest cavity a gaping maw, organs strewn like discarded toys. This wasn't surgery, it was a butchering, a macabre display of alien curiosity. Panic clawed at my throat. We had to get out. But where? The emergency escape pods were jammed, the crew, if any were left, were silent. We were trapped on a floating death trap with invisible predators stalking the corridors. Sarah, her eyes wide with a manic desperation, lunged for the vent above the doorway. In there, she screamed, the metal grating already starting to give way under her frantic prying. We squeezed into the cramped, stale air-filled space, scraping against the rough metal as we crawled forward blindly. The alien surgeons, alerted by the noise, slammed open the door. Their cold, blue eyes scanned the room, lingering for a horrifying moment on the bloody mess before turning towards the vent. A wave of nausea washed over me as Sarah, ahead of me, shrieked. Her hand, reaching for a turn in the vent, brushed against something cold and slick. Before I could react, a blinding blue light erupted from the vent, accompanied by the unmistakable sizzle of flesh burning. The stench of singed hair and cooked meat filled the cramped space. Sarah. Dear God, Sarah, grief, raw and agonizing, threatened to overwhelm me. But I had to keep moving. Survival, primal and desperate, clawed its way back into my mind. I forced myself forward, tears stinging my eyes, the metallic tang of blood heavy in my throat, the vent twisted and turned, a labyrinth of darkness. My lungs burned, my muscles screamed in protest. Then, a faint light flickered ahead. Hope, fragile and flickering, filled me. The ventilation shaft debouched into a service corridor, a narrow passage lined with pipes and electrical conduits. It was a dead end, blocked by a massive metal door. With a surge of adrenaline-fueled defiance, I slammed my shoulder against the door, again and again. It wouldn't budge. Suddenly, the blue light flickered back to life, bathing the corridor in an eerie glow. The alien surgeons materialized at the other end, their skeletal forms casting elongated shadows. Their movements were deliberate, devoid of wasted energy. This time, their eyes weren't scanning, they were fixated on me, trapped. I was trapped. I backed away, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, until I hit the wall. The lead surgeon, its elongated head tipped forward, let out a low, guttural chirp. It wasn't a sound of aggression, but of curiosity. I was the specimen now, the subject of their macabre experiment. They advanced, their movements silent and predatory. They weren't butchers, they were biologists, dissecting a live specimen with detached fascination. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the inevitable. Then, a sound unlike any I'd heard before, a high-pitched whine, building in intensity until it became a deafening screech. The alien surgeon closest to me froze, its head twitching as if listening intently. The whine cut out, replaced by a deep, booming voice that echoed through the ship. It wasn't human speech, but a series of clicks and whistles that somehow resonated with primal fear. The alien surgeons reacted with a flurry of frantic movements, their blue eyes wide with what might have passed for fear. They turned, their movements jerky and uncoordinated, and with a final, chilling chirp, vanished into the shadows. I stood there, alone in the sterile corridor, the metallic tang of blood clinging to my clothes. The Bermuda Triangle wasn't just a graveyard for ships, it was a battleground for something far more terrifying, and I, the lone survivor, was left with a chilling truth: I wasn't the predator's prey. I was just a pawn in a far greater, more horrifying game. The booming voice continued, a low, rhythmic thrum that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the ship. Despite the terror clawing at my insides, a morbid curiosity flickered to life. What other horrors lurked in the depths of this metal coffin? Driven by a desperate need to understand, I peeked through a cracked doorway into a service bay. My stomach lurched, then threatened to erupt. In the harsh light of emergency fluorescence, a scene unfolded that defied human comprehension. Tentacles, thick as tree trunks and dripping with an iridescent slime, writhed across the room. Coiled around them were the mangled remains of the alien surgeons, their skeletal frames twisted into grotesque contortions. At the center of this macabre tableau, a creature of pure nightmare pulsed with a sickly green light. It was vaguely insectoid, all chitinous carapace and razor-sharp mandibles. Its eyes, multifaceted and glowing a sickly yellow, swiveled towards me. Panic, raw and primal, surged through me. I wasn't a scientist now, not a curious observer. I was prey, a speck of dust caught in the gaze of a monstrous storm. The creature let out a sound that was more a feeling than a noise, a wave of pure, unadulterated loathing that washed over me, threatening to drown me in its icy grip. Before I could react, a tentacle slammed into the doorway, shattering the metal like glass. Shrapnel tore through my arm, the searing pain momentarily eclipsing the terror. Adrenaline kicked in, a primal cocktail fueled by fear and the desperate will to survive. I scrambled back, my injured arm screaming in protest, dodging the flailing appendages. The creature, enraged by my defiance, let out another wave of psychic loathing, this time laced with a chilling amusement. It wasn't to kill me quickly. It wanted to play. It wanted to savor my fear, to dissect my terror like a surgeon with a scalpel. The thought ignited a spark of defiance within me. No. I wouldn't be a pawn in its twisted game. Remembering the service corridor's layout, I dived behind a massive coolant tank. The creature roared, the sound shaking the very foundations of the ship. Then, the scraping began. Metal screamed as the creature tore through the bulkhead, its blind rage a monstrous symphony. I knew a head-on confrontation was suicide. The coolant tank, however, offered a desperate gamble. With trembling hands, I ripped off a panel, exposing a network of pipes and valves. The creature was close now, its fetid breath washing over my hiding place. Without a second thought, I twisted the largest valve I could see. A geyser of icy coolant erupted, spraying the creature in a wave of freezing liquid. Its enraged shriek echoed through the corridors, laced with a new note, pain. The coolant froze on contact, creating a thick, icy barrier around the creature's writhing form. For a moment, the room held its breath. Then, with a sickening crack, the ice began to spiderweb, fracturing under the creature's immense strength. I knew it wouldn't hold for long. But it had bought me time. Time to find an escape pod, a weapon, anything. Scrambling to my feet, my vision blurring with pain, I raced past the thawing monstrosity, its yellow eyes burning into my back. The booming voice returned, a low, insistent call. Was it the creature I'd just enraged, or something else entirely? The answer came in the form of a colossal shadow blotting out the corridor ahead. The booming voice grew louder, a challenge, a warning. The Bermuda Triangle wasn't just a battleground, it was a hunting ground. And I, the unwitting witness to a cosmic struggle, was simply the latest contestant. The fate worse than death, it seemed, was surviving it all. My lungs burned, my vision blurred with a crimson haze from the reopened gash on my arm. I sprinted blindly down the corridor, the booming voice echoing like thunder in my skull. Behind me, the enraged shrieks of the insectoid beast cut through the air, a chilling counterpoint to the booming calls. Emerging from the corridor, I stumbled onto the open deck. The once pristine white surface was now a macabre canvas of gore, mangled bodies of my fellow passengers strewn like discarded dolls. In the center of the carnage, bathed in an unholy green glow, stood the colossal creature the booming voice belonged to. It was a behemoth, a monstrous leviathan of chitinous plates and pulsating bioluminescent organs. Its multifaceted eyes, each the size of a car, scanned the deck, locking onto the insectoid horror emerging from the shattered service bay. The battle commenced. The colossal creature unleashed a torrent of bioluminescent energy, a blinding white wave that engulfed the insectoid beast. The smaller creature shrieked in agony, its chitinous armor smoking and sizzling. It retaliated with a volley of its own, needle-like appendages erupting from its carapace, launching themselves at the leviathan with unnatural speed. Each metal spike that found its mark sank deep, injecting a potent venom that caused the leviathan to convulse in pain. But its size was its advantage. It slammed a massive, clawed limb down on the insectoid, crushing it into a grotesque paste. The metallic stench of burning flesh filled the air, a sickening perfume to the carnage. My stomach churned, but I couldn't afford to lose myself in the horror. This was my chance. While the two titans were locked in combat, I needed to find an escape pod, any escape pod. My gaze darted across the ravaged deck, landing on a battered escape pod dangling precariously from its docking bay. Smoke billowed from its ruptured hull, but hope, a flickering ember, ignited within me. Just as I began to stumble towards it, a colossal limb of the leviathan slammed down, crushing the mangled remains of the insectoid beast into the deck. The booming voice returned, this time laced with a chilling finality. It wasn't a call, it was a verdict. The leviathan turned its multifaceted eyes towards me, its gaze heavy with an ancient malice. There was no challenge, no curiosity, only the cold, uncaring efficiency of a predator about to eliminate its final prey. terror threatened to paralyze me, but the searing pain in my arm jolted me back to reality. I wouldn't go down without a fight. Desperation fueled my actions. I lunged towards a nearby railing, ripped a metal pole loose from its moorings, and charged at the Leviathan, a defiant ant facing a titan. The Leviathan, seemingly bemused by my audacity, lowered its massive head towards me. Just as its chitinous mandibles were about to clamp down, I propelled myself forward, the makeshift spear held high. The impact was like being hit by a freight train. The metal pole bent in half, but with a sickening crunch, it pierced through one of the creature's multifaceted eyes. The Leviathan roared in rage, a sound that shook the very foundation of the ship. It reared back, its body convulsing in pain. I used this momentary reprieve to scramble towards the escape pod. With a final, earth-shattering roar, the Leviathan turned its attention back to me. Its remaining eye, a burning ember of hate, locked onto my form, but it was too late. With a surge of adrenaline-fueled strength, I clambered into the escape pod, slamming the hatch shut just as a massive claw slammed down where I had been standing a moment before. The world became a kaleidoscope of smoke and fire as the escape pod blasted away from the doomed cruise ship. I looked back one last time, catching a glimpse of the Leviathan turning its attention back to the colossal shadow that had begun to engulf the entire Bermuda Triangle. Was it another creature? Another hunter? Or perhaps a cosmic entity, finally taking notice of the feeding frenzy within its domain? The answer didn't matter. I was hurt, alone, and hurtling towards an uncertain future. The Bermuda Triangle had held its secrets, horrific and brutal. Now, I was its unwilling emissary, forever scarred by the sights and sounds of a battle beyond human comprehension. The silence of space, once a source of wonder, now felt like a suffocating shroud. The only sound that echoed in my ears was the booming voice, a chilling reminder of the horrors I had witnessed, and the ones that may still lie ahead. Days bled into weeks aboard the battered escape pod. My rations dwindled, water grew stale, and the gash on my arm festered, a constant reminder of the nightmare I'd escaped. Sleep offered no solace, haunted by the screams of the devoured, the grotesque symphony of the clashing titans, and the chilling final verdict of the booming voice. It wasn't just a sound, it was a curse, a promise that I wouldn't be forgotten. Then, one day, a flicker on the monitor. A faint distress signal, weak and distorted, slicing through the cosmic silence. Hope, a fragile ember, flickered within me. Another survivor. Perhaps a rescue ship. I altered course, my pod groaning in protest as it strained towards the signal. The closer I got, the more the picture on the monitor resolved into a horrifying reality. A colossal alien vessel, a derelict hulk of twisted metal and bioluminescent growths, drifted in the void. It reeked of death, a graveyard for something far larger than the cruise ship I'd escaped. The distress signal came from within. My hand hovered over the controls, a primal urge to turn back warring with a morbid curiosity. What horrors awaited inside? Was this the source of the Leviathans, the ultimate predator that ruled the Bermuda Triangle's darkness? With a deep breath, I set the escape pod down on a docking platform protruding from the derelict ship. An oppressive silence hung in the air, broken only by the groaning of the alien vessel. Inside, the corridors were dark, the air thick with the metallic tang of decay. Luminescent fungi, casting an eerie green glow, clung to the walls, illuminating a scene of grotesque carnage. Skeletons, massive and insectoid, lay strewn on the floor, picked clean by scavengers. The deeper I ventured, the more brutal the scene became. Flesh ripped from bone, chitinous carapaces cracked open, a testament to a battle beyond comprehension. Then I found it. Not a bridge, but a gaping maw, a pulsating wound in the heart of the vessel. From within, a low, rhythmic thump resonated, a heartbeat of a monstrous entity. It was a trap. The distress signal, a lure. But fear was an old friend now, gripping the makeshift spear from the cruise ship, I stood before the maw, a defiant speck before the abyss. The thumping grew louder, the air vibrating with anticipation. Then, with a sickening crack, the maw expanded, revealing a horrifying maw lined with razor-sharp teeth, but it wasn't teeth that drew my attention. Deep within the cavernous maw, lodged in the creature's throat, was the colossal leviathan from the Bermuda Triangle. Its body, mangled and lifeless, served as a gruesome trophy. The booming voice echoed once more, this time filled with a raw, primal terror. It wasn't a challenge anymore, it was a plea, a predator far greater than anything I'd encountered. The true ruler of the Bermuda Triangle was trapped. And I, the lone survivor, held the key to its demise. With a maniacal laugh, I lunged forward, the spear a beacon of defiance against the encroaching darkness. The escape pod, a tiny speck against the vastness of space, broadcasted a single, chilling message into the void: this is humanity. We are not prey. We are the virus. The laughter died in my throat as the maw surged forward, a wave of teeth and darkness. But it wasn't fast enough. My spear, fueled by a lifetime of condensed terror and survival instinct, found its mark. It wasn't the killing blow, not by a long shot. But it was enough. The creature recoiled, the booming voice turning into a shriek of agony. The leviathan, lodged in its throat, twitched once, then went still. The ship shuddered, the bioluminescent fungi flickering and dying. The rhythmic thump ceased. Silence, thick and suffocating, descended. I stood there, gasping for breath, adrenaline ebbing away, the weight of the experience pressing down on me. I was a wreck, both physically and mentally. But I was alive. Then, a faint light flickered on the escape pod console. A new message. It wasn't a distress signal, but a string of complex symbols. I had no idea what it meant, but a spark of hope ignited. Maybe it was a response to the "We are the virus" message. Maybe it was a translation. Perhaps it was simply an acknowledgement. Whatever it was, it wasn't a threat. With trembling hands, I activated my escape pod's emergency beacon, a silent prayer for rescue drifting outwards into the vast unknown. Days turned into weeks, then months. My supplies dwindled to a critical level. But I held on, fueled by the faint hope that the message had been received. One morning, I awoke to a blinding light. A sleek, silver ship hung in the distance, its sleek lines and advanced technology a stark contrast to the derelict hulk I stood upon. Hesitantly, I initiated communication. An image flickered on the screen, not a monstrous alien face, but a being of pure energy, radiating a sense of calm and understanding. It spoke, not with words, but with emotions and concepts that flowed into my mind like a gentle current. They had received my message. They had witnessed my fight, and understood the threat the Bermuda Triangle posed. They weren't there to conquer, but to contain. With a sigh of relief, I allowed them to guide me aboard their vessel. As the derelict hulk drifted away into the darkness, I knew this wasn't a perfect ending. It was a scarred one. But it was an ending nonetheless. Humanity, though tested, hadn't been devoured. We'd survived, and maybe, just maybe, earned a sliver of respect in this vast, alien universe. The journey that followed was long, filled with new experiences and knowledge beyond human comprehension. But one thing remained constant, the knowledge that the Bermuda Triangle, now a beacon of containment, would forever be a testament to the day humanity stood its ground against the abyss. We were not prey. We were a virus, yes, but a virus of resilience, of defiance, of survival, and that, even in the face of cosmic horror, was a kind of perfect ending.